is a pretty big bruh for the bruh podcast. See. Bro, you already know I got that C on me. I got that C. I got that C on me. Yo, this is episode 2, brother.
Yep.
Dude, this is crazy, man. We made it to week 2.
We made it to week.
Bruh, let's go.
One thing, you will probably, if I'm speaking, you will have to probably bring it closer. And then
Of course. Oh, that's very true. Yeah. Okay.
So you're the. Oh, you want me to hold it?
You can hold it. You're better.
Check. Yeah, actually, I'm monitoring, so I can just make it better. What's up, Sam?
Yo, I'm doing well. You know, it's been a good day today. Yeah, I've been doing well. It's been editing my project, my intermediate project's going well, and I'm liking my footage. So yeah, man. It's going well.
What did you? So first of all, introduce. We have to introduce. This is the.
Bruh podcast, bro.
That's right. So what do you did over the weekend? Something fun?
This past weekend, man, yeah, I was chilling. Trying to even think. Saturday, Sunday. Saturday was a chill day, man. I really rested. I rested very well. Sunday, went to church, did my thing. Yeah, man, it was a good weekend.
Got free food from church?
I actually did. There was a lunch. Yeah. Bro, I'll invite you next time, bro. I will.
I'm just coming for the food.
Bruh.
That what unites us.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. Yeah. Well, yeah, man. How are you doing, Sean?
It was pretty good. I actually I did a lot of things. So I shot on Saturday, so I was pretty busy that day for someone, a corporate commercial company. And the next day I went to the beach. The day we were it's called Newport.
Oh yeah. I know Newport Beach.
It's beautiful. I mean,
there are so many places I still need to go, like in the LA area. Like I haven't been to Newport Beach. I haven't been to Malibu yet. I want to go to the what's it called? The Grove. I want to go to. I haven't been to the Grove yet, man. Like
I had a pre-screen today at Grove. I didn't even go.
I had a pre-screening today. Yeah. It's a film, and I had 2 tickets. We could have we could have been there. But are you down to go to Newport this weekend?
Bruh. Baby.
Yeah.
What day? Which day? Like Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah. So
I love how we're just talking about our plans on the podcast. It's great. It's lovely.
Yeah, it's on. It's I have some friends. I'll make you meet them. They're great. Not from NIFA. They're from Emerson.
Oh, okay.
But there's some really good dudes. And let's go. I mean, we're going on Sunday morning. So if you're down.
Sunday morning. I'll have to let you know. I'll let you know.
So this is why Sam doesn't go too much places.
No, but this guy is so spontaneous, man. Like this guy, he will like not even way back when, a few weeks ago, let's go a few months ago before, one day he's like, call me, hey Sam, we're having a barbecue tonight with the boys. I was like, a barbecue? He's like, yeah, you want to come? I was like, bro, like you're asking me like 2 hours in advance. Like I can't come tonight. Next time, like tell me a little bit more in advance. Like, okay, bro, okay. And then 2 weeks later, bro, we're having a barbecue tonight. I'm like, bro, whatever. And then eventually I went to one of their barbecues. It was Indian and Pakistani guys. They made their Indian food, their Pakistani food. Oh my goodness, guys, when I tell you it was good, you guys, if you haven't tried Indian or Pakistani food, bro, get on that immediately, bro. That is good. That stuff is really, really good. So I was happy I went. I'll go again another time when it's planned in advance.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing about Sam is like he has to plan all this stuff. I'm not like that. I'm like, yes, someone would call me like, hey, we're leaving at 9:30. It's 9:25 right now. And I'll probably just say, let's go. But I don't like losing opportunities.
I mean, the thing is I can do that. Yeah, I mean, okay, so sure. My base, I feel more comfortable when it's planned. That's true. Like I try and plan out my week. I try and do that. Not that I follow it perfectly, whatever, but you know, I try and do that. But I like spontaneity too. I just like it in its place. You know what I mean? Like if I have free time, like then yeah, of course. But usually I try and plan something. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I know.
So this will be a war with you. Either you go to this church or either you go to the beach because it will be early morning.
I don't know. let you know. I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
So yeah, any good stuff today? So today our topic would be how do we as individual filmmakers approach each project, right? That's one of our not the topic, but one of our discussions. So what any films that you watched recently?
Trying to think of the films that I've watched recently. See, I always have to take a look at my letterbox when I do that. Shout out to my letterbox. Follow me on Letterboxd. Sam Ogunremi, SAMOGUNREMI. Follow me on Letterboxd. Those are film review app, best app in the world. Better download it. Okay, films that I've watched recently. Okay, so I tried to talk about this film first week and I got interrupted because this stopped and then I forgot to talk about. I'll keep it brief. New World stars some of the best Asian or best Korean actors, I should say, in the game right now. Is back, but it's back in 2013, so about a decade ago. Amazing action thriller and very thematically deep. I really loved it. Immediately top 10 favorite films that I've watched ever. And I just thought it was so well done. It kind of took like the kind of let's say the gangster realm, I guess, of a big city in Korea, and then made it into kind of this parable that talked about people going after power. It's about this cop and this bad guy who's obviously he's part of the bad guys, but he's the protagonist, and kind of how the whole story intermingles and then shows like human nature. I thought it was beautiful. So that was a great film I watched recently. And then I just started, for all you Lord of the Rings fans, I just started the Moritz the German guy. This guy has been bothering me to start the show. The new show that came out, Rings of Power. Only watched first episode. There's 3 episodes out, so I'll catch up. But the first episode was actually pretty good. The thing is, Lord of the Rings, it's like very like high caliber in terms of what the fans expect. Yeah. So I know there's a lot of fans who aren't really happy with it. I can admit I'm just a moderate fan of Lord of the Rings. It's not like how I feel about Star Wars or whatnot. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was good, but there's definitely still some stuff that needs to be worked on. But yeah, it was cool. So that's some of the stuff I've watched recently. Yeah. What about yourself?
I just what? No.
I said it. That's 7.
Oh yeah.
I just watched 7 the other day, which is David Fincher film. Absolutely beautiful film. One of the best films I've seen, and I rewatched it, so that was the second time I watched it. And hoping to emulate that potentially in a short film, maybe that we do. Maybe we can talk about
that's a secret project. That wouldn't be released until we're kind of like in the development process right now.
Oh, and hopefully, assuming that we do it right now. I mean, we'll see, but yeah.
If our pitch gets selected,
and if we have the money for it.
Exactly, that's true. But I think I'm pretty positive that we will be in place to shoot that. Hopefully.
A nice film noir project for all you film noir fans.
Yeah. I just rewatched Moonlight. It's just it's something else. Moonlight, it won Best Picture 2016. And you saw how it won. First it was first they gave the nomination to Damien Chazelle's film. It was La La Land, right? 2016, and then they said no, it's the wrong call, and then they called back. It was bad. It was bad. Like I would have literally be crying after. But you know what? Eventually, Damien Chazelle won anyways.
Facts. But like, how do you make that sort of mistake? I haven't done the proper research to look into what happened that night. Yeah. But the fact that they opened the letter, the Oscars, like they do.
It was. I think they gave it for Best Actress Emma Stone, and then they gave because Emma Stone I think won for the Best Actress. So they had the one which said Emma Stone. So the guy who was reading, I don't remember his name. He's a great actor. So instead of he saw Emma Stone and he knew that it was La La Land. So he said La La Land. Then eventually they realized it was for the Best Actress. Moonlight is a drama. It's based on different lifetime of us, and they have divided into chapters, like when he's little, like early stage, mid stage, and it's like there's a guy who is trying to groom. He's like, groom here means differently, but who's trying to nurture a child. There's a guy who is trying to nurture a child, and the child has a toxic family in terms of mom. She's a drug addict. But the guy who's nurturing is the drug dealer. So, but he's talking to the mom and asking her to stop all of this, like all of the drugs stuff.
Is that Mahershala Ali's character?
Exactly. But then she says that you are the reason why I'm doing all that stuff. So the score. I mean, the music is just sensational. It's just the feeling. Even if you don't see the film, you just listen to the score. It just takes you into another world. And I mean, Barry Jenkins, who I think is the director. Yeah, yeah, writer, director, and the cinematography is, oh my god, it's just incredible.
I've seen some images like when they're in the ocean. I think that's at the end of the film. Oh, is it not?
Actually starting.
Oh, really? Oh, start and the end, isn't it?
It's like the 20th minute.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I've seen the ocean scene. I've seen a good few scenes from the film, and yeah, I mean the cinematography looks absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, and of course you'll like that.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, so let's start out. I think we're getting ahead of time because we planned that we should probably try to. Because we talk a lot, and I think we lost. we planned to bring it to like 25 minutes mark, but I think it went to like 45ish. Let's try. Hopefully. So I'll start asking you a question. Since we'll talk about process. So for people who don't know, we are filmmakers. We make films. Different. Maybe different positions, but at the end, it's towards making films. We have worked together a lot recently. So I have a question for you, and then you can probably ask the same question from me. How do you? I mean, it's a vague question, but how do you approach as a director? How do you approach a film as a director? And you do script supervision too, but that I'll come to later. But as a director, how do you approach the script which you have written yourself? Do you start with I mean, sometimes you always you're skeptical, right? That either you should be probably investing your time in the pre-production and eventually making that film. Sometimes you write the script, you never make it. So how do you approach a script which you think would develop better?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, like, for me personally, as someone who came into filmmaking through the avenue of just this kind of interest in writing out the ideas that I had so, like, viciously and vivaciously and visually in my mind, like, it came to a point where I was like, okay, I'm writing all these ideas down, and I have literally a list of dozens and dozens and dozens of ideas that I want to turn into features one day, once I again get that foot on the pedal. But it came a point where I realized that the stuff that I was kind of just jotting down in terms of my notes for this is a really solid idea, and then the stuff that I was really writing out, that I wanted to direct these ideas. And so now that I've kind of come to film school and I've kind of, again, learned a few things, there's kind of been this kind of, how would I say it, like a certain mode that I go into for both writing and directing. So if I write a script and then I go to direct it, I'm basically separating my brain into two parts. And sometimes I tell my actors this. What I will say is that when I'm writing the script, when I'm writing the story, I know every detail. I know exactly how I want the how the characters to sound. I know exactly their mannerisms. Mannerisms are a huge thing for me. I know exactly how I want the space to look. I know almost exactly how the blocking should look in most scenes. Not 100%, but in general, in terms of the ideas that I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to do this. I know every detail, and I write every detail, and then I delete some details, and then write it again, and then delete it, because that's what you're supposed to do as a writer. But then once that script is locked and you give it to the actor, that side is gone, and you have to turn it to director mode. And now you say, listen, as a writer, I had all those things in my mind, but as a director, I'm giving you this script, and I want you to interpret it as an actor, because I've chosen you for a reason. I believe that you're talented to do this. I believe that this fits your acting style, or fits the audition that you gave me, or whatever it is. Yeah. And so that side of kind of like hyper scrutinizing everything in terms of the writing stage is gone. And as a director, I'm hyper scrutinizing some things still to an extent, but not in terms of my actors. I'm now giving them kind of the freedom to interpret the story through their characters, so that there could be a bit more collaboration. And same thing with like a cinematographer as well, and with a production designer. Once that script is locked in director mode, you give it to them and you say, hey, I want to hear your ideas. I'll give you my ideas. I want to hear what you think of them, like very honestly and all those things. So I think that would be my answer to that question, that I kind of separate my mind two ways. When I'm writing it, it's very, very specific. And then when I'm directing it, the good thing is that because it was so specific, I know my base. I know exactly what this story has to be, at least at the core, so that if someone's like, if the production designer is like, hey, like I want to do this and throw this into it, and I can be like, oh, actually, that wouldn't work specifically because of this. Like, I know, or, oh, wow, that could work because it would fit with this. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that would be my answer, to really split your mind into kind of those two kind of modes of being a writer and director. And, I mean, in my opinion, you know, a lot of the best directors ever have written the stuff themselves. You know, auteur, the term auteur director is usually a writer-director. And obviously there are ones who don't, but I think there's something special about that combination. So, yeah, I really love it. Yeah. And, yeah, let me ask you the same thing. Like, in terms of, you know, I know that, again, you have a lot of interest in film and a lot of, I mean, I've even watched your writing develop over the past, you know, few months and whatnot, and your idea, but obviously you kind of came from photography. That was your origin, and now going into this interest with cinematography and lighting and camera movement, and then also direction as well. How would you say that you kind of, I guess, balance both of those? So, you know, maybe when you're directing a picture, like, you know, you have your trustworthy artisan there who's DPing it, and obviously you don't want to lean over his shoulder too much because you trust him, right? But at the same time, you know exactly, like, you know in your mind exactly the movement, you know the lighting, you know exactly. And then on the other hand, like, as a DP, how is it that, you know, you get a script? What are some of the first things you're wanting to lock in? What are some of those things that you're trying to lock in, idea wise? And you know, obviously when you get on set, you know, how does the script kind of come alive visually for you?
Right. Yes, I came up with a photography background as you just introduced. So script always comes. So first of all, approaching script as a director is totally different to how I approach as a DP. It's totally different because as a director you are looking over more subsections. As a DP, you are still looking over a lot of sections of the film, but you're more towards just visual style, right? That's your main area of, and obviously you're developing a color scheme. But for as I would probably start with directing. I think for me, I always approach scripts as characters. That's one of the first thing which comes into my mind I more than the story, I'm always more leaning towards characters as a director, because I think if you know the character really well, it drives the story, right? The character is the driving force of the situation. So obviously it's always like studying and knowing so much about the character that eventually try to look over the story through his perspective. And then I mean, I don't like to micromanage stuff. I like to macromanage stuff, but still, it's sometimes when as a director you have a vision, right? So I would like to because it's a really collaborative process. So it's working with different people who are expert at what they do, right? So I try to give a good amount of creative freedom to all of them and talk to them, right? Because eventually I can think about a certain thing in a certain space, but if a person who is, let's suppose he's a production designer or just like a wardrobe person, right? The wardrobe person would be just doing wardrobe, and her or his thinking about the certain part of the story would be so much more than me. Sure, I'm working on the script, working with the actors, working with the visual style, working with the in the pre-production, sure, but those people are just focusing on that certain aspect, right? And so you always try to gain knowledge from them and eventually make a decision based on mutual interest. And eventually, one thing that should be your final decider should be that what's better for the story. It shouldn't be like what's better for me or what I chose. Eventually, so that's what I've learned over the years. So now coming towards as a DP, it's a totally different situation. The first thing I like to do whenever I get approached for a film, just like I think today you saw, I was in kind of like two meetings with two different directors, different vision, different stories. I like to talk to the director not just how like they would bring you a script, and I just try to take the script and put it on the side and just ask. That's how I like to do, and I'll ask them, how did you start it? How did you start writing it? And just talk about the characters, and eventually they would be just telling so passionately about the idea. And eventually, if you feel that the person is so passionate about the idea, you start knowing more about the story, rather, because the script is like, let's suppose if it's a short film, like it's a 10-page script, right? But the person who has written has a complete experience of life experiences, which he might have put somewhere, but that's not much noticeable at that moment. So then I start creating a visual deck with them. I go with storyboarding, shortlisting, then looking over each side of the production design too, because that's part of the visual. So I like to work with the production designer, have meetings with them, talk to them, because eventually, as a DP, it's your job to create the color scheme with the director. So, and that dictates the production designer's work, because eventually you have to. I mean, and lighting. You know how much I love lighting. That's one thing which is always, for me, helpful to create mood in each scene. And at the end, there's a difference between good cinematography and beautiful shots. You can easily get beautiful. Sometimes you put so much effort just to get beautiful shots, but eventually you have to cut down on the edit as a director or as a cinematographer, because it doesn't suit that. And that's what I've learned over. Sometimes I would take really, really average shots in terms of the look, right? But at the end, exactly. So that's my process of how I approach film in different perspectives. I hope it answers.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because even with what you were talking about, I remember, I think one of the first things, I can't remember what class it would have been, but one of the classes we were in together, like one of the teachers, either in directing, so like Rick, or shout out to Rick, I love Rick, or Sonora screenwriting, also love Sonora, shout out to Sonora. I think one of them probably would have said that, again, whatever decisions you make, obviously as from a director's perspective, from a writer's perspective, it has to serve the story. And, a lot of things, it's the same thing with writing and what you were talking about with character, because as writers, like, we have an idea, but the real idea actually is to, once you've written all that on page, once you start going into rewrites, because writing is rewriting. Sure. Writing isn't just, you put it on the page, writing is rewriting.
You're writing, sorry, I hit my face. You're writing till the last second probably before you start shooting.
No, it's facts. And one thing that, like, we were instructed is that, and not even just as much instructed, but that I've heard and that I agree with, is that at the end of the day, you write the story, you have it in your mind, you're like, this is what I want. But then when you start reading, you're like, wow, some of these moments are lining up. What always works is what the character wants and the character's actions. And so the story, obviously, everything has to work for the story, but the way that you make your story better is by listening to your characters, what they want to do, what their next action should be, with kind of this combined theme of looking at maybe their past action, their situation, and then maybe the theme or something like that, and kind of combining it all together. And usually the answers are relatively clear. Obviously, sometimes it's not, and that's when you get stuck, and everyone gets stuck at some point in any process, whether it's cinematography or writing or production design or anything. But yeah, that's the idea, that you kind of look at it again, you relook at it, you look at the character, you look at the story, you look at the theme, you look at that, and you really just zone in, and then you just make a decision. One thing I heard that was outstanding about Martin Scorsese, who's obviously one of the greatest directors of all time, it was from, I think, a podcast as well that Jonah Hill was on, a pretty famous one. I can't remember the dude's name now, but he has some like funky hair and like a mustache or something. And Jonah Hill was asked who was the best director you ever worked with, and very quickly he said Martin Scorsese. And then and he's worked with a lot of directors. I mean, he's Jonah Hill, like, he's worked with a lot of directors, but so quickly he's able to say that. So the guy asks him, like, the podcast host, he's like, wow, you like said that pretty quickly, like, why is it? And then Jonah Hill like took a second, and then he was like, for me, like, when I am on set and as an actor, maybe sometimes you're sitting around or whatever it is, but Martin Scorsese will see something. There's something that maybe isn't working in a scene, or there's something that, like, is the cinematographer is not happy about, or whatever the problem is. And Jonah Hill was like, Martin Scorsese can close his eyes for like 15 seconds and then make a decision, and that's it. And it's the right decision. Not just a decision, but it's the right decision. And that's literally like in all facets of filmmaking. I mean, maybe right or less so, because sometimes you have a lot of time. But directing, cinematography, production design, everything on set, even acting. Making that decision on what you're going to do next. I mean, acting during a take, you have to make decisions sometimes on the fly. That's what makes you great. That's what makes you like different than other filmmakers who sometimes are wary. And obviously everyone's growing and everyone has, is going to get to that point if they so dedicate themselves to it. But, that is what sets apart those directors, 100%. Directors like Scorsese, like Villeneuve, like Tarantino, because, they have so many decisions to make and so many people counting on those decisions, but they make them emphatically. And then when someone like has like, something to say about it, like when there's in an interview, they'll back up that decision again and they'll say, yeah, that's what I made, that's the decision I made, even if they would make another decision later. So it's all very interesting. Yeah, it's good.
Just looking over that, I was just thinking about the incident that happened between, I think, between Ben Affleck and David Fincher. During Gone Girl. Because like David Fincher is really, really perfectionist about certain things. Then he wanted Ben Affleck to take off the cap on a certain scene. And then he called him that he's a freaking unprofessional actor. But eventually they're great friends. I mean, then there's people like, exactly, it's all about decision making at the end. I think it's 99% about decision making. Even like it's smaller details when you go towards makeup stuff, like the makeup of each character at certain process of the film. It's just to make the right decision. Sometimes it's because it just creates that whole of the character, I would say. And I think sometimes you make bad decisions, but the thing is you have to make decision. That's the thing. People who
it's better to make a bad decision than to make no decision.
Exactly, because no decision will leave you with nothing, and a bad decision will leave you at least with a lesson, right? That you're probably not doing it next. I think you are having something bad in your. That's fine, Sam. We are outside. So yeah, what do we talk about more?
Brother, we can talk about anything, man. We can talk about anything. What are some of your favorite? I don't even know if this is a question that's easy to answer. What are some of your favorite American foods? I wasn't interested in that.
Cheeseburger. I mean, you know what? What?
I said and donuts. Oh, but you say you don't eat donuts. Oh.
Yeah, no, I eat a lot of donuts, but I've tried because I don't know. So you know that I had an itching situation. I had like itching problem.
No, I didn't know that.
Okay, so I had like severe itching. I would get severe itching attack before I would get sweat. So if I'm when I say severe, it means severe. That I couldn't even do anything. I have to stop if I'm walking. I have to stop if I'm whatever. So because I couldn't control myself. So I had like 4 consults with the doctor here, pretty nearby, and one of the best doctor I came to know in LA, who is a skin specialist.
Okay.
Started medication, and I figured out that most of the times when I was not eating donuts, I wasn't getting that attack. Could be because, but I got my like what you call the food allergy testing done. Okay. They freaking take out like seven bottles of blood from me. No. To do 7 different tests. I was like, you guys wanna kill me today? But yeah, it came out like negative. I don't know, but he said you don't have any food allergy, but I figured out myself that maybe it's so. Right now, I'm trying to avoid it. I'm still eating like once in 2 weeks. Yeah, so not that much.
Well, that's sad because it used to be 3 times every day.
Exactly, just like you eat Welch's. Sam love Welch's.
Dude, well, listen, I'm becoming a filmmaker. I gotta eat Welch's. I mean.
But you don't drink coffee. How can you be a filmmaker and don't drink coffee?
That's a good point, man. I'm anti-coffee. Actually, this is a story. I'm sure my dad won't even care. This is a good story. So this is one of the stories of why both myself and my sister will likely just never drink coffee. So when we were younger, me and my younger sister, shout out to my younger sister, Donnie, she's the GOAT. She's 3 years younger than me. 3 years younger than me. I know she's gonna have something to say about that. 2 years years and 8 months. Okay, I'm going to say the story. So when we were younger, my dad would take us to school every day, and he would always have coffee because he loved coffee. He doesn't drink coffee as much anymore. In fact, he cut coffee cold turkey for quite a while, which was crazy. I've never seen anyone do that. But anyhow, so when he would take us to school and, you know, we were kids and everything, he would always bring coffee. And sometimes he would bring coffee just in the mug or in like a cup, but that didn't have a lid. And I'm just like, bruh, what? Bruh. Like, bruh. You know what I mean? Like, why? And obviously, we're driving, we take a turn, the thing spills on my pants, on the chair, on everything. So me and my sister, we nicknamed coffee Trouble. That's what we nicknamed. Every time we saw coffee, we said, bro, that's trouble. Because it would just spill on us when we were kids, man. So because of that, I mean, I won't even say because of that. Because I've tried coffee, I don't like the taste. So because I don't like the taste, and also I have the childhood memory, I don't think I'll ever need coffee, honestly.
So it's kind of like a trauma. I would say that's a trauma that you have.
It's a soft trauma. Nothing too bad. Yeah.
Speaking of soft trauma, I literally met Graham today.
Oh,
I wanted
why
to.
is that
No, look. You know what? Graham is probably one of the best teachers I would say we had ever had, or we would ever have. I'm talking facts. I mean, the way he's the guy who never says that this wouldn't work. He never says that. He always comes up with situation to run the idea, and eventually, I think for most of us it worked.
And again, to give context for those who don't know, like Graham, he was our second screenwriting teacher that we had at NIFA, and he, like, again, for me, someone who my primary interest is screenwriting, and obviously combined with directing, but you know, I started with screenwriting, and I find my love for filmmaking primarily in screenwriting. Like, it was just outstanding. He's also Canadian. Shout out to the Canadians. And like, he is someone who, he just understands screenwriting in a way that's different than most people I've ever met. And because the thing is obviously story is universal, but you know, film started 150 years ago and took story and made it something that had never been, which was audio visual. Yep. There was never anything audio visual that was like, you know, on a screen. You know, the audio visual was a theater. Which was obviously an outstanding experience and still is an outstanding experience. I still like even acting in theater. But there's something different about film because it's prepared, it's nourished, it's edited. I think it was Kubrick who said that the editing process is the thing about film that sets it apart from every other art ever. And so Graham, like, for me, it was like someone who, again, kind of tracking back to screenwriting. He, for me, understood like structure, and hopefully I got him again at NIFA. He understands. I hope he understands structure so well that like Sean was saying, you can give an idea and it might be trash, but he can still make it work because all that really needs to happen is you know, work out the structure, make sure, okay, there's this problem in the first act, your plot point 1 isn't very clear, your climax is kind of shabby, all this stuff, and you know, obviously he's great at screenwriting in general, and we've been able to see at least one of his short films. I think the one he did when he was at AFI. But he's just a talented guy. He just knows his stuff, and he knows it so deeply, and is also able to explain it very well. Because there's a lot of people who know it very well but aren't able to explain it, and you know, obviously you want the combination of both in a teacher. So I've been so grateful to have him, and every time I've written a script and, you know, been able to show it to him, he's just elevated it to new levels. He's an outstanding teacher. I'm really, really happy.
And for context, he's the first person to write a film for Amazon Studios. The first Amazon Studio film is written.
Really?
Yep, is written by Graham Tolman.
What was that called?
I have no idea. I think he
How
wrote.
did you get that random fact? Did you ask him or?
No, he told us. I think it's 2009 when Amazon Studios started making film. Because Amazon Studios not that old. It's like literally, because it was a delivery company.
Amazon in general is young.
Yeah, it started with a delivery company which changed so much stuff. Yeah. One more. I had a really good question for you. Yeah. So one thing which See, in student films, I would say, because since like I work on some obviously professional sets, then I work on student sets. It's two different environments, and you have seen films which are student films, and then there are actual films, actual short films, or short films made by more mature directors. What do you find that students usually struggle to develop in the process, or in the film? Some student films look great, but there's some common personalities which are always missing in some films, which you figure out that they are struggling with the same concept or same ideology, and that we see really often, since we go to a lot of screenings too in school, or it's just outside looking, or other platforms. What do you find difficult? They find difficult.
So, funny enough, even though again I'm like literally a baby in filmmaking,
We all are.
we all are, is true. But I am the babyest. But that's not a word. Anyhow, the first set that I was ever on, believe it or not, was a feature set, and it was a feature set back in Canada, starring Mel Gibson in the film Fat Man, and I got to meet Mel Gibson, outstanding experience as well. And it was this crazy Santa, like gone bad type of story. And I still haven't gotten around to watching that movie, but I will. But I did work on that set. Embarrassing that I haven't watched the movie yet. And one thing that stood out to me, even before I'd worked on any student sets, any small indie sets, anything like that, was just how kind of separated everything was. So there was no chance, that you as some grip, or you as a like what I was doing, which was location supervision. There's no chance that like we would just cross paths with an AD, or like, Lord, like forbid, the director, or anything like that. There was this kind of hierarchy, and that hierarchy, like when we talk about like above the line and below the line, like that was very, very clear. Like, you would see the actors walk by. There was this kind of, people would maybe stop you and look, people would be escorting them. And obviously there's parts of that isn't healthy, obviously, but the fact of where it works and why it does it is the same reason that you see, for instance, with professional athletes. So, and for me and you, who were, obviously we're very, very competitive in various sports, like, you understand that as an athlete, the higher you go in a specific level, the more you have to be protected by your coaches and by the...
Do you mind if I check it quickly? If the recording is going fine. Yep. It's going pretty fine. I have no idea. Yeah, it's going good.
We're good, guys. So yeah, as an athlete, the higher you go in your kind of competitive repertoire, the more that the coaches and the club start to invest in protecting you, in making sure that there is security, in making sure that you have the right bubble around you so that you can mentally be in the mood. Because all of the top, like, I guess you could say worldly endeavors, which obviously is not all there is to life, but all those top things in terms of athletics, in terms of entertainment, in terms of doctors, in terms of everything, all of it is 99% mental. Sure. Even the ones that are physical, like sports and stuff, and like acting, and stunts and all that, it's 99% mental. If you're there mentally, you will be there physically.
I mean, sports, I would say it's like a 50-50 game. It's 50% physicality, 50% mentally how strong you are. And
yeah, so I would agree that that physicality obviously is important. There's no way you can get around physicality. But the point is that if you're mentally there, your mind will make sure that your body does the work. Like, your mind won't let you, do those lazy days. And then once you step on that field, on that ice, on the court, whatever it is, your body can be, outstanding form or in not so good form. But what actually matters the most is your mind. Because if your mind is there, that means that everything that you've practiced, even if you've practiced as much as the other guy, like if two guys have practiced, about as equally, if one's 99% there, the other one's like 60% there, it's a night and day. And so same. Now we're kind of tracking back to filmmaking, but you were asking me about specifically. Oh yeah, the difference. So there's kind of that bubble effect when it comes to above the line for film, and there's not that in student films. However, even with that, obviously you see some amazing student films that, don't have that, level of maybe professional kind of elite, ensuring that the actors and the director and everyone has their mental space and everything in check. So what is it? For me, when I look at it, it's only two things. You can have the same script, a beautiful script, a script written by Graham Tallman, rewritten 10 times, and it's been given to a great director and everything else. There's only two things that will separate it if you give it to a student director and a professional director. Two things: pre-production and lighting. That's the only two things, in my opinion. And because the thing is that, especially in student projects, and we've talked about this, like people will try and get the best camera and not focus on the lighting. And then you can see how the 3-dimensional starts to become 2-dimensional, or things that should be lit well are not, or keys and fills are just missing. And for me, when you look at a film and you say, wow, this looks really good, like a lot of that has to do with the lighting. Even if the camera is not a Sony, is not an Ari, is not a red, whatever, like it can still look really good if the lighting is pristine. And then the other thing is the pre-production. Obviously the script is really important, but again, we're assuming that it's the same script that two ones are writing. The pre-production is the other thing. A lot of times students, maybe they're busy, they're doing other things, and so they don't give the proper time to pre-production. If you plan everything, it's the same thing that I was talking about before with the separation of the writer and director mindset, because you plan everything in pre-production, and then when you're on set, things will change. But because you have that good pre-production solidified and at your core, okay, wait, where are we? Okay, I know exactly where we are because we planned it all and we wrote it all. So we have everything. We don't need to worry. You know what I mean? So I think those are the two biggest things. Obviously, there's other things as well, but I think those are the two biggest things. If you have really, really good pre-production with a good, solid, team of production heads, and then you have good lighting, you can make a really good film with a good script.
I agree.
Almost every time.
Yeah, but so from my perspective, I believe there's one thing which I think which most student films, including even some of my films, would be missing, is that students often are unable to create a realistic world around the story. They would have a really good story, but how much does it relates to reality? Because even superhero films are eventually like we see superhero films, they are eventually related to a normal human being who have a certain psychology, right? And I believe that creating that psychology in each of the storyline is what most of the students struggle to, and that eventually goes in all departments. In part of production, then because they don't have enough pre-production. That's one part of it, because they can't think of realistic situations, right? So yeah, pre-production is one of the things which is missing. But I think one thing for sure is creating real world. It just became cringe sometimes, which we see because it looks so fake that you would say, does it happen actually not even like so. And that's once you start, your interest towards that film starts going back.
And your answer is really good, because you're even focusing on something even deeper, because I kind of took let's say you have the same script and everything, but you're talking about the story itself. So what's on the page, what's your directing? Yeah. So it's I think I think they're both very right answer.
They're different. The good thing is that they're different answers, but because you are looking more towards the production value, which is 100% the thing which exactly. And then I'm talking more about the internal part of the script. So but even in certain situations, I think sometimes I actually, so myself, I'm not a huge fan of, I would love to shoot some big projects, right? But I sometimes enjoy smaller productions more, because it just gives you that intimate connection with it. I mean, just sitting on the, if you're like, if I'm just, let's suppose if I'm operating, I'm a DP, I like to operate myself, right? You would never see me trying to get another operator. A lot of people do that still, like even students do that. Yeah, they like getting an operator, and they would like to just command how, but I think that's, even I might not be the best operator, but the thing, it just gives you the intimate connection that you have the control over the frame, right? And sometimes if you have an operator, because I have worked, so since I started with working on commercials, I always used to have operators before, because in commercials you're sometimes working with two cameras, you never work with one camera because it has exactly. And so sometimes you will be just like looking at back and just you looking over to the operator and just going, go up, go up, go up, go up. But the thing is, when you're sitting on the camera, on the everything, that there's the entire world which is going on, and then you can just have the slightest, I would say the slightest decision you have in yourself, which makes it so much more beautiful than having someone to do that. But yeah, and like, but certain situations you don't have that, right? Like sometimes if you're shooting a stunt, you are shooting multi-camera, because you can't, or you're shooting a huge explosion, then it's just like the person who is, I mean, they just have certain controls, so they will probably have 7 operators. Speaking of on Skyfall, the stunts, the explosion of the train, it's a oneer. But they, guess how many angles did they had? They had 11.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So they had 11 operators.
Yeah.
So it was just like they were literally shooting like a TV show.
And I think like that actually kind of with what we're kind of tossing back and forth, that's a great place to at least start to wrap up. Because in terms of filmmaking, like, whether you're talking multicam, whether you're talking, single and you want to operate, whether you're talking big pre-production, whether you're talking little pre-production, student, professional, everything in filmmaking at the end of the day has to do with flexibility. And it's kind of even, again, kind of going back to what Jonah Hill was saying about why Scorsese is the best, is because of those decisions, you have to be flexible on your feet to do that. And so, as filmmakers, as we continue to get better and better, because that's what we do. We get better with every single film we do. Every day of writing, every day of editing, every day of learning. And with all of that, we kind of just want to become more flexible, so that whether like you said, there's a stunt that has to be captured on 11 cameras, or it's an intimate shot that you can do with it, it comes out with the same result, which is quality. And that's what obviously we want in our films. We want quality from the first, word on the page to the final like frame on the screen. And I think that that's tough, because there's so many things to think about. There's characters to think about, there's themes to think about, there's visuals to think about, there's dialogue to think about. But yeah, I think that's all part of the learning process, because once you learn more and you garner more from other individuals, and then, as we were saying before, you collaborate with individuals who have strengths in those areas, you're able to bring it all together into just this beautiful piece. And that's what you kind of see with some of the best films. I mean, again, just to end my portion, like, one of the most notable films I've seen of this year is the Batman. And the reason for me that the Batman was so good is because even though Matt Reeves is a director who is good, but hasn't like I still think he's yet to hit his peak. I think he's going to hit his peak, and I think it's going to be glorious.
I think the one who just literally hit the peak is our favorite, probably one of the is Denis Villeneuve.
I was about to say, yeah. I mean,
I would say. But I still like.
I think he's still even.
But one thing which you might have, I think you agree with me, the films which Denis Villeneuve did in the starting of his, kind of like in the starting of the journey, was like Prisoners, then he did Sicario, then he does Enemy, Arrival. Those films are. Those are. I think those are the films which define him as a director.
And if you haven't watched his French film Ensembles, you have to watch it. It's very disturbing. Well, I shouldn't say very disturbing, but it's quite disturbing. So if you can't handle that, then don't. But it's an outstanding film. Probably one of his best as well. But I see Sicario as his best. But yeah, that's a French Canadian film. But yeah, with Matt Reeves, like one of the reasons that I thought Batman was so good was because Greg Fraser, cinematographer, the production designer, all the lighting, the dialogue, all of it just matched so well. Everyone did the editing. They did their roles to perfection. And when you have a collaboration like that with a man like Matt Reeves, who's so humble, like if you watch some of his interviews and you see the way he speaks, you can just tell that humility exudes from him. It must be such a joy for an actor to work with a director like Matt Reeves.
Same goes for Denis Villeneuve too.
Yeah.
He looks like there's like person like Fincher. But I mean Fincher, I love Fincher. He's my favorite director. But then you look at Denis Villeneuve, he looks like he wouldn't be like there's some sweet souls, right? It's not right. Like most of the people said that you have to be dictator as a director, but no. When you see personalities like them who are doing on such a big level, then you feel that humility still should exist.
Of course, and I mean, you obviously, you look at the greats. You look at the Kubricks, who's, in my opinion, is potentially the greatest filmmaker of all time. Well, yeah, sure, Deakins, but then I was gonna also think of Hitchcock, and you see these personalities who obviously they were dictators, and they were, some of them even abusive at times, and some of them, and for obviously, a different time back when maybe they didn't feel, maybe their community around them didn't see it as abuse, but obviously they were going too far. And the thing is there's a lot of people, and I've had conversations even with people at NIFA, even with he would not care if I name drop. Like Julian, our one of our ex. Don't laugh, bro.
Julian, we are talking about Julian like if the
bro. Julian is the funniest guy. We should have on the podcast. But one of the things that he kind of mentioned, and I won't necessarily put words in his mouth, so I'll say it vaguely, kind of what I interpreted, was that the greatest of athletes or filmmakers and all that, they have this ego to them, and obviously to an extent you have to have confidence, and you agree with that as well. Yeah,
I was the one who was saying that the ego, there must be ego, but the conversation we had was like ego. There's a difference between a positive side of the ego and a negative side of the ego.
Well, this is what I call confidence. I think that there's confidence, and that confidence can be high. But humility has to be, because the thing is, the filmmakers who are coming, and at the end of the day, filmmaking is 150 years old, not even 150 years old. If you think Hitchcock and Kubrick are the best that are ever going to be, unless the sun dies out tomorrow, you're wrong. There are filmmakers who are coming that are going to absolutely change the shape of filmmaking forever, and they're going to absolutely flip people's eyes around. And in my opinion, the best of the best of the best are the ones who have that humility sharp, because they know that they don't know everything. They're not God. They're not, they don't have that full scope. So they know, like we were talking about earlier, that the production designer, that the cinematographer, they can give their 2 cents, and that can elevate it. And obviously they all have a lot of talent, but that's what I believe. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably time to wrap. I think we have crossed our last limit. Since we do one-ers, we don't want to cut.
Yeah,
so we are doing one-ers. And on the next podcast, we have a special guest. We won't be naming him until right now, but I'll just say he's probably one of the most funniest guy. The lights are off, and so we are supposed to be kicked out.
It's okay. Wait, I'll turn on my flashlight.
You know what? So
I'll turn on my flashlight.
Let him turn on the flashlight, and we can. So we are ending our podcast on a good note.
Yeah.
Hope to see you guys on the next Friday.
Exactly. Let's go. Thanks for joining us again. You guys are gonna like the special guest. He's hilarious. So yeah.
And the Bra podcast ends.
Bra.